My name is Tyler Vanderhoeven. I'm an ecosystem engineer at the Stellar Development Foundation. My job is kind of this top of funnel to build educational programs, initiatives to onboard developers into Stellar. Stellar's been around for a long time, since about 2013. It's one of the older L1s. Most of you probably have never heard of it though, or have at least never written code for it, right? Traditionally non-Turing complete. There's only about 22 operations you can do on classic Stellar. But within the last year, we've started adding smart contract functionality on top of Stellar. We've kind of taken our time, waited a little while, try to learn from the industry, things that have worked, what hasn't worked, to really make sure that the smart contract protocol that we build, this Turing complete programmable money, has the best chance for success. And that's what I want to get into today. Kind of your opportunity as a developer, engineer, maybe somebody is building a design firm or development firm interested in getting into Web3. We've got a lot of money to give away for this adoption, this onboarding into Soroban. So what exactly is Soroban? Soroban is a Turing complete smart contract protocol that we're adding alongside the Stellar blockchain. So it's not a new blockchain. It's kind of extending the functionality of what we're calling classic Stellar. So all of the assets, all of the value, USDC, the stocks and bonds, all of these real-world assets immediately become available on top of this new smart contract protocol, Soroban. So we're still in testnet. We'll be launching on mainnet later this year. So what I'm proposing to those in the audience is really to see an opportunity to build on a new smart contract protocol. It's going to help work on developing it, getting it exactly the way that you would like it. Things that may frustrate you in other smart contract protocols, having the opportunity to form something new. So we have $100 million. And right now we've got these three primary opportunities for getting involved. The first is if you're new to Rust. Soroban is a Rust WASM-based smart contract protocol. So if you're new to that, this top one here, fast, cheap, and out of control, that's what we want all of our smart contracts to be, right? Great place to learn Rust, learn how to build on top of smart contract, to really think like a smart contract developer, building contracts that are fast, that are cheap, that are very innovative, out of control, as I like to call it. We also have Sorobanathon, which is this program platform for those that maybe aren't going to be entrepreneurs, they're not going to start a company, but they're very interested in developing like proof of concepts, white papers, open source apps, but maybe they don't want to carry it on. Maybe they're just experimenting. Maybe they want to do a comparative analysis between WASM and the EVM or some of the other WASM-based chains. It's just kind of your opportunity to play. And then last but definitely not least is the Stellar Community Fund, where you have the opportunity to actually launch something that maybe will survive and last a little while. This is a grant program of upwards of $150,000, kind of no strings attached, just build something, ship it, keep it alive, see how it goes. This is the website for fast, cheap, and out of control, one that you'll want to write down. If you're new to Rust, new to WASM, this is a fun programming challenge if you're an engineer. It's quite challenging, but it is a lot of fun. Next one, Sorobanathon. That's the website for that. And then also the Stellar Community Fund. So hopefully you're interested, but you might like to see a little bit of code. My goal here is not to impress you necessarily with our smart contract protocol. I'd like to get you interested, willing to open up the documentation, to play around, maybe write your first smart contract. But let's be honest, smart contracts aren't new. We're not doing anything terribly outrageous. I want you to get in there and decide if you like what we're building. But I'm going to walk through some of the code and some of the unique decisions that we've made as we've been building it. And if you remember nothing else from the talk, make sure you remember soroban.stellar.org. This is our documentation site. And we'll go ahead and get into some code here with a simple Hello World application. Again, it's all going to be written in Rust. One of the nice things is that if you learn Soroban Rust, you're learning just Rust. There's nothing fancy. There's no weird crates going on. If you learn Rust through Soroban, you can take that Rust and take it anywhere, any job that involves Rust. It's Rust on the back end, Rust on the front end, Rust in your tests. It's just Rust. This is a basic Hello World contract, very, very small, compact. I mean, let's be honest, it's a Hello World. It's not that crazy. One thing you'll notice if you've written Rust before is we're excluding the standard library. This allows our contracts to be very, very small by default. You're only going to be importing those things that you absolutely need. It's a very intentional design decision that we make. We care a little bit less about everyone on the planet being able to write smart contracts and more that every smart contract that gets deployed is small, it's cheap, it's secure. Those are the things that we're focused on. Again, we're late to the game on smart contract protocols, so we're going to get it right. Here's a test, just a Rust test. Nothing on this is happening necessarily on-chain. You can do all of your development, all of your testing, because our actual protocol on the back end that actually runs these smart contracts, because it's also written in Rust, you can load up this environment. This environment variable here on line 8 is the actual Soroban environment. So you can run tests as if it was running directly on-chain. You can backfill the environment with any kind of state that you want, account systems. Again, Rust on the contracts and Rust in the test as well. Building out those contracts, you just build it with Cargo, same you would with any other Rust type program. We compile it down to a WASM binary that you can then deploy as your actual contract. So that's all very cool. Well, let's kind of move beyond just a hello world example and move into some cross-contract calls. We just built that contract that we did before, and this is how you would import that interface into another test. You can see this isn't even another contract, it's just another test. So as if your tests are, you can write these contract demos as you would just right inside of a test. Very simple to experiment with. You can pull in other WASM files, other binaries, other cross-contract calls, pull that into your contract, and then call it just like you would any other import. Again, this is an example of if we pulled in that hello world as a cross-contract call. So that's cool, but it's still hello world. You can see if we run that test, just a Rust test. Do all kinds of complex unit tests or integration testing. The next thing I'd like to do, though, is actually do some token imports. You remember I mentioned that this isn't a new blockchain, right? We're not bootstrapping liquidity. We're pulling all of the stuff that we have in Stellar straight into a smart contract protocol. So let's do that real quick, right? Stellar's native token is XLM, and we have this Soroban token spec, which is a smart contract that's actually native to the Soroban Stellar side, which will allow us to import any asset that's in Stellar directly into our smart contract protocol, Soroban. So you can see we just import that as a token interface. And then down here in our new faucet function, we can make use of that token interface down on line 26, where we're going to do a transfer off of that token client. We pass in some arguments, a from address, a to address, and an amount there on 18, 19, and 20. So that's a very small little function, but allows us to do a very powerful thing where we're making use of assets that are directly on the Stellar side. You can see there's the import for that token interface. It's a very similar interface to an ERC20 interface. There's that faucet function again. You can notice something interesting on line 8 where we're doing a require auth. It's there's quite a few of these unique and interesting things that Soroban is doing, and one of them is kind of rethinking how authentication works inside of smart contracts, where we don't just borrow from whoever signed the contract and submitted it. You can actually do explicit multi-sig or do authentication off of the arguments, the address arguments that are coming in from your actual function. So in this case, we're going to require auth from the from address. You could also require authentication from the to address and kind of compose these relatively complex authentication mechanics without having to borrow from the signature system from the contract that was actually submitted, which is quite interesting and unique. Not much else is happening in this particular contract. We're just exporting an argument of the new balances between those two addresses, the from and the to address. Here's our test, just another Rust test. Looks very similar to what we did before. Spin up some demo addresses. Down on line 15, we'll give them some native amount, some native currency to pass back and forth, so that when we call that faucet function down on line 20, we actually have some of those native currency to pass back and forth. And that's cool, but it's still not happening on chain. This is just happening in a Rust test. So the next thing we really want to do is build this function out and then deploy it onto our test network so that we can actually see this happen all on chain with our Soroban CLI. So we build that. Next, we're going to open up our CLI. We're going to generate some addresses there at the top, and then right there in the middle, we're going to get the public keys of those addresses. And then the last three, because this is actually bridging, as it were, kind of between Classic Stellar and the Soroban side, we need to actually fund these addresses. On the Stellar side, an account does not exist as an account until it actually is funded and on-chain. So we're going to need to do that on the Stellar side so that we have some value to actually move from the Stellar side and show it over on the Soroban side. So that's what's happening here with these curl requests, is we're calling what's called friendbot, which is kind of like a faucet, which will give us 10,000 XLM on each of those accounts as we call them. So later on, when you see a large number, a large balance, Stellar has 7 decimal points, so that's where that's going to come from. We're only going to be moving 10 of the smallest amount in the Soroban side. Well, you'll notice that we're not going to be doing any wrapping, we're not going to be any exporting or importing of assets. If you have it on the Stellar side, it shows up on the Soroban side. We're going to add a network to our configuration. Is one of the nice things with the Soroban CLIs, you can kind of create these identities and networks. Just makes working with the CLI a little bit easier. Say we're setting up our RPC and our passphrase for what we're calling our future network. All right, so then we take our Soroban CLI and we deploy this contract that we built. And we get at the very bottom, that's our contract address. Now we're going to invoke it. We're going to first invoke the function, the hello function, which took in the argument of the to string. And we get out the output hello world, but that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to do the faucet function. So exact same contract ID. And now we're going to pass it in the from address that we built up, the to address. We're going to send 10 from Soroban, and you'll notice down at the bottom, those really large numbers, and then on the right-hand side, you can see the 10, then the minus 90 over on the left-hand side. The large number is because of that future net that we called to get the 10 million of the smallest amount, that 7 decimal. But then that 10 on the Soroban side was moved. And you'll notice, again, we're calling this on the Soroban side, the smart contract protocol. We didn't have to do any wrapping or exporting. It doesn't exist either on Stellar or on Soroban. It exists on both simultaneously because, again, this isn't a new chain. We're getting access to all of the assets that are on the Stellar side for free immediately on the Soroban side. Which, again, this blows my mind that you can have a chain that has so many assets that's being used for real-world use cases. It's always kind of been locked. You haven't been able to do whatever you want because we didn't have Turing-complete smart contracts, but now we do. And now we're just looking that up. We're doing another curl request. This is looking up on the Stellar side, that balance of the to address, and you can see there the decimal point there on the far right side. That was those 10 micro units that we passed over from the Soroban side. So both on the Soroban and the Stellar side, the balance is the same. All right, fantastic. Well, we could definitely get into a lot more. I'm very excited personally. I've been building on blockchain since early 2017, and to be able to have a stable, real-world chain that's been around for so long but didn't have that Turing-complete functionality to now have that, I'm very excited. And so I'd like to direct you again to these 3 different opportunities, whether you're a builder, or you have builder friends, or you're looking for an opportunity, you've got an idea and you want to band together, you've got these 3 different opportunities to learn, kind of experiment, and then also to build startups or more full-fledged experiments. Again, the thing I'd really like to leave you with is that Soroban.stellar.org. This will be our documentation. This is going to be our router. to all of the other opportunities, documentation, the Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, Soroban-a-thon, and the Stellar Community Fund. So make sure to write that down. Go poke around with it, play. We've got a great Discord community to answer questions. It's really a wonderful opportunity. If you've ever been frustrated building on smart contract protocols before, you have an opportunity to not build a new one necessarily, right? This isn't a new blockchain, but to get access to a lot of really valuable assets and now add Turing-complete smart contract functionality on top of it. Thanks so much.